So, hi everyone and welcome to my talk today on all he does is line things up. I presume that is something that we've all heard in our early years practice in the past. It's definitely something I have said as well. So today I'm going to be talking to you in two different hats essentially. I'm going to be talking to you about my research, my doctoral research, of which I'm in my third year, and I'm very much in that space at the moment of having an existential crisis every day. I'm wondering why on earth I have decided to pursue this. So I was very nervous about coming here today because I am in that chaos at the moment of nothing makes sense, and hopefully I will make sense during this talk. But I also come here today as a practitioner, as somebody who has worked in the early years for a long time, and I was always drawn to those children who were different, and I was fascinated by how those children who are different are often viewed through this deficit lens, who are often viewed as a problem to be fixed or solved, and actually what I could see was this rich and vibrant way of being and playing, and that came to make more sense to me as I learned more about my own neurodivergence across my own life. So today I'm really thinking about the chaos of research and where we are when we're thinking about play, but also thinking about kind of the core of being a practitioner and how we actually connect with our children. So just a very kind of brief overview of who I am. So as I said, I am neurodivergent, so I lead a lot of my work with my lived experience. I have a diagnosis of ADHD and autism, and that has come to really shape the work that I do in early childhood. I've also spent a lot of time in the last year when I've been thinking about my positionality, also looking at my own biography of play, thinking about actually I was an autistic player and all those things that were often viewed as quirky or odd or strange. Actually, I still play in that way today. They're still very meaningful to me and they help me thrive and they help me feel a sense of joy. So I want to advocate for children in the early years, and particularly those who are neurodivergent, specifically autistic, to really get to this point of joy and really starting to celebrate that actually all play is okay. I'm a lecturer at Goldsmiths University, and I do lots of other, I get my professional oxygen beyond my university work where I actually get to be with early years practitioners because I love being with early years people and with children. As I said, my doctorate is around play and neurodiversity, and I'm specifically looking at the pathologization of play. So the fact that when we are observing and being with children who are neurodivergent, we kind of think about that play often in a very different way. We don't afford children the same kind of observations, the same kind of assessments when we are engaged in their play. And then I've just included in there as well my own special interest, and just to show that play doesn't need to make sense for it to make sense to the person. So if you come to my house, my husband will often say when people come into my house, count how many faces you see. My special interest since I was a young child is things with faces. Everything has to have a face on it, so every ornament in my house has a face, every item has a pronoun, it is personified, so I personify objects. I like to make things be something rather than just a chair. It's a chair with a personality. As a child, people found it really strange that I would play with items that didn't seem to have a purpose. And they were like, why is Kerry speaking to that chair as though it's a person? And actually it's because I enjoy that process of personification. And so when anybody comes to my house, that is the question, how many things with faces can you see? And anyone who follows me on social media will see when I put pictures on, there are always things with faces. So the first thing to say, special interests in particularly autism, which have historically been pathologized, seen as a problem. Actually, special interests bring us joy and they give us a sense of esteem and well-being. Being autistic and ADHD, I've intended to cover lots of things today and I'm not going to get through all of these. But essentially what I'm wanting to talk about today is about this reframing how we view, particularly my focus is on autistic children, but how we view how children play. I'm really thinking about how we can develop a culture of neurodivergent play, rather than comparing everything to the norm, actually seeing neurodivergence in its own distinct culture. And I'm going to begin with an anecdote because I think it really highlights some of the journey that I've been on when thinking about autistic play. So this picture here, hopefully that's shifted, yeah. This picture here, this is my nephew Bobbins. And Bobbins, he started school this week, but over the last few years, it has become very apparent that Bobbins is neurodivergent. He is a non-speaking child, although he does use delayed echolalia and gestalt processing. But across the first 3 years of his life, my sister, who's also an early years practitioner, she said to me, I know something's different, I just know. So he's not speaking, he's kind of got very, very specific interests, he's very involved in diggers, like diggers are his world. And so she started that process that a lot of parents will follow when they identify that there is a difference with their child, and she started to obviously engage with specialists. And what she found in her conversations with specialists is that all the conversations were about talking about Bobbins on his worst days. So what's wrong with Bobbins? What problems is Bobbins facing? And there's a deficit of language. He's not speaking enough. He's not making friends. He's not playing with enough things. And play isn't coming naturally to him. And my sister, as an early years practitioner and having an autistic sister, was like, I'm really not comfortable with only ever hearing about my child described on his worst days, because actually my time spent with Bobbins, he is just, I often call him a wildling. He is just chaotic, but in the most joyous way. He is unapologetically himself. He communicates in the most vibrant and rich ways, even though the only script that he has is, me love diggers, me love diggers, me love diggers. It's all he talks about is diggers. And what kind of became really apparent when I was speaking to my sister is that from a professional perspective, from a specialist perspective, he was considered to be delayed, deficit, to have restricted, repetitive and limited interests. And one of the pieces of advice that she was given that kind of sent her over the edge is that she was told to sabotage his play. So she was given advice by a therapist who said he needs to start playing more normally and he needs to extend his repertoire of play skills. He can't just play with diggers all the time. It's not realistic. It's not the real world. And he's not going to make friends if he only plays with the diggers. And my sister felt so uncomfortable by this term, sabotage. And she was like, why would I do that? Why would I not actually mirror him and join in with his play? Why do I not just lean into the diggers? And so she's happening to do a rebuild on her house at the moment, and she was like, I've got a builder's yard, so I am going to lean in. I'm not going to force things on him. I'm not going to force him to plus one word to a word that's being used. I'm not going to sabotage him. I'm not going to redirect him. I'm just going to be with him. And over the space of a few years, they spend so much quality time together, and she ignored a lot of the advice that she kept getting given by people. And she didn't redirect his play. She affirmed and she embraced him. And what we noticed over time is that actually his gestalt script, so the language that he was using, was increasing, but his non-verbal communication was increasing. When you were around him, you couldn't say he wasn't a communicator, because the minute you saw him, you heard dinosaur noises. He loves making these dinosaur roars all the time. And he would pull you by the hands and he would take you across this builder's yard and you would go off on these magical adventures with him. Yet, when he was going to his nursery and when the conversations with specialists were still happening, there was still this emphasis on, here's a problem that needs to be fixed. And so we kept pushing back against that. It turned out when I had a conversation with my sister that his interest in diggers actually stemmed from a very early experience of going to a builder's yard with his dad. And what we know about Gestalt language processes is that when they begin to use chunks of language, it often is emotive. It originates from an emotive experience. And so he'd been to a digger's yard with his dad and he has played with diggers all that time. And by leaning into this interest, he can now independently operate a forklift truck. So he is now at school, but he still lives at his builder's yard. He is taking risks, he is using full sentences, he is starting to cooperate with peers, and he has got a genuine interest in how things work. When you go to his house, the minute he sees me, he grabs me hand every time I'm with him, and he takes me off on his adventures. And it is one of those joyous experiences that I have had with my nephew, who still doesn't have, obviously, the typical functional language that we would see. So he's starting to develop a positive perception of his autism, of his way of being. And similarly, across my own career, I am somebody who has said this statement many, many times. Even as an autistic person, I've been the area Senko that goes into an early years setting and say, play doesn't come naturally to children with special needs. And I'm going to children don't have special needs, they have human needs. And that's where we need to get back to, is actually every child, every human has needs. When we call them special or additional, or we create a new name for them, what we're doing essentially is we're othering those children, and those children then become subject to these perceptions and these ideas that are just not accurate. This idea that play doesn't come naturally. Again, for any of you who are working currently with young children, we know intrinsically that this just doesn't feel right, because we see the range of patterns and ways that children play when they are in early years settings. And where does this come from? Where does this idea that play doesn't come naturally, where does it originate? You know, we've all heard of models of disability. And some of the things that I'm doing in my research at the moment is really looking at models and paradigms and research and applying it to this concept of play. And I think what we can see is that if we think that play doesn't come naturally to a child, or we reject their neurodivergent pattern or way of playing, then we start to think about it in terms of, okay, I've got this child, and this child loves spinning. They come in every day and all they do is spin. And we consider that spinning as useless. You know, that's a word that we've heard today. It's got no point, it's got no purpose. And so what we then use is we apply early intervention kind of lenses to that play, and we focus on fixing and correcting or sabotaging or interfering. And the controversial thing that I'm trying to kind of figure out in my research is, not only do we interfere and do we try to kind of sabotage that play, but what we're actually leaning towards is taking play away from children under, and I hate saying it, but under the guise of play-based intervention. Play-based intervention is about taking a child often away from their natural inclinations of play, their natural ways of being. And that's not to say that we shouldn't have play-based interventions, but it needs to meet the child where they are at. We need to move away from this idea that your play is not okay and you need to change your play. Because one of the risks that we know can happen when children's play is denied to them is that they then start to develop that realization of, oh, 2 minutes, oh goodness, oh, I don't fit in, you know, I don't belong here, and then the child has to change to fit into another agenda. And what that can lead to is the child begins to mask their inherent selves. The other big problem, and I'm going to try and cover this really quickly in my last 2 minutes, the other big problem is that if we are dependent on a pathology paradigm, so this idea that if you are autistic, ADHD, dyslexic, disabled, if we rest on this idea that actually those things in themselves make you deficit, we start to look at children's play differently, and we start to take play away as a right. And this is what we need to remember with play. Some of the writing that I'm doing at the moment in my literature is, I think we often jump to play as a right, but I think we actually need to go back to the core. Play is a human need, it is a basic human need before it becomes a right. So every child needs play, and then we as adults uphold that play. And then what further develops is play becomes your identity. It becomes a part of your identity and who you are, and it stays with you across your lifespan. And just to highlight this has happened to me, this situation has happened to me multiple times when I've gone out into earlier settings, and I've also been this person. And this is the kind of inspiration for All He Does Is Line Things Up. I've gone into settings multiple times, and there has been a child on the floor, and they're lining things up, and they're engaging in pattern making, and they're really creating order in the way that they play. If that child is a neurotypical or a typically developing child, the educator goes, wow, look at this schematic play, it's so exciting, let's extend this, let's provoke, let's put invitations, and they get excited about the schema. The minute autism is applied to that child, or they're on a diagnostic pathway and they're lining things up, that's a symptom of their autism. We need to stop that. We need to sabotage. We need to redirect. We need to extend. We need to move away. And so this kind of spot the differences. If we're not teaching our early years practitioners about what it actually is to be neurodivergent, to be autistic and other neurotypes, if we're not teaching them about the core things and not pathologizing them, so not thinking that a special interest, for example, is a problem to be fixed, if we're not teaching those things, how can children actually have their rights to play upheld, which is something that I'm very, very passionate about. Have I run out of time? Yeah. There is lots more I want to say. I had 25 slides, but hopefully I've given you a good enough insight into where I'm at. I'll share the slides so people can look at them.
Hi everybody, thank you so much to the wonderful Pedal team for inviting Abby and I here today. My name's Gina, I'm the founder of Play Included.
And I'm Abi Dodson, I'm a trainer and a brick club facilitator with Play Included.
And this is Maggie. This presentation was meant to be delivered by our wonderful colleague, Dr Maggie Laurie, but she's not able to be here, she's not able to travel, but we've got her in spirit, so huge thanks to Maggie for preparing this wonderful wonderful presentation. So I'll try and prop her somewhere prominent.
Yeah.
So she is,
And we've got to, please remind us not to forget her. So
I'm not going to forget to take her home.
And if there's any tricky questions, Maggie's answering.
Yeah, she's on speed dial.
Okay. So the first thing we wanted to do is just really to introduce you to Play Including, tell you a little bit more about who we are, but also to introduce our wonderful Brick by Brick programme, which sometimes getting your tongue around can be a bit tricky. We also want to tell you a bit more about brick clubs for younger people and about some of the research that's already been done, but obviously about research that we are hoping to do in the future. So, Play Included, who are we? Well, we're a wonderful little organisation based in Cambridge. We're very proud to be partnered with the Lego Foundation, and we've been partnered with them now since 2020. We really do value everything about children and child-led activities. That's really what we are and what we are about. And what we want to do is ensure that all children have access to positive social experiences through play. And I think that's something that we're all really, really passionate about. As part of that work with the foundation, we've been able to develop a lot of resources for parents and also for schools that are free. So this is the only plug, but it's all free. The programs that we've got a series of play at home activities which have been a real joy to get involved with, and I think listening to some of the other speakers earlier today, it's been really important for us to make sure that we've had the voices of the parents and the children involved in designing those activities, but also testing them, which has been really great to see a lot of the photos we get through from the parents and the children of what they've built, what they've created, which has been fantastic. There's just an example of one of them there on the screen. Building Friendships was a wider programme that, again, we developed with the support of the foundation in terms of our response to COVID-19 and the need for children to really be able to start to connect with each other again as a result of going back into school and having all that time away, being separated from their friendship groups, or possibly even moving on to a new school because they were changing from maybe infant to primary or further and beyond that. So the Building Friendships are whole class activities that can be done with that box of Lego that you have in the corner. You don't have to go out and buy extra special kits. And we've based those activities on, again, testing them in schools with pupils and seeing what really works. And again, they're all free to be downloaded off our website. But the flagship really for us is the Brick by Brick programme. And it really, for us, is the most important thing that we do, isn't it, Gina? It's been designed to support neurodivergent and all young people. As I said earlier, play included, we are all about play for everybody. And so what we hope that the Brick by Brick programme can do is that it can bring some of those meaningful social opportunities for children that may not otherwise have that opportunity to experience a positive, playful environment, to help them to develop friendships and to support their mental health and well-being, but also to exercise different skills, but doing it in a fun way, engaging with the Lego, building models together. What we do primarily is we look at collaborative set building, and we focus on 3 roles that the children do, and everybody has a go at everything. So you get to be the engineer, the supplier and the builder. The engineer sort of corrals everybody, makes sure everybody can be involved and starts to identify what we're going to build. We all sit around with the instructions so everybody can see what the set is that we're going to build. The supplier has to find the pieces that we're going to use, and then the builder gets the great job of actually putting the bricks together. But everybody has a go at every role. So in any brick club, everybody's going to get the joy of building, but we're also going to get the joy of working with each other and not just working alone, which can be a very different and sometimes challenging experience for children, because often a lot of children quite happily, you give me a Lego set, I want to sit and build it on my own. Even adults do it, to be fair. So it's really about using those expert skills that they've learnt at home and using that joy and sharing it with other children. I've been working with some children last term, and one of the boys was particularly good at technique. These were older children. And the other 2 children in the group were like, we really don't want to do this. We're really scared because we don't know how to do this. And he actually said, don't worry, it's going to be absolutely fine. I can show you how to do it. And as the facilitator of that session, the only thing I did was sit back and let him mentor the rest of the team. And he was an absolute superstar. More importantly, shall we show them the video, Gina? Hopefully this is going to work. We've got a quick video just to show you, to tell you a bit more about the clubs.
Hopefully the sound comes on.
Yeah.
We don't seem to have any sound going on here.
We don't have speakers currently.
No speakers currently. Okay. Well, we've got a YouTube channel.
Yeah, we'll show you that.
And we'll show you it on
We'll
our
send that to
YouTube
everybody.
channel. It's a lovely video. Yeah, it's just the children sharing their experiences of being in a brick club, and what they say is basically they really like it.
Yeah. And it's about that voice of the children, isn't it? That we're always really finding is this so important. In terms of the programme, I've just explained very briefly those 3 roles, but that's only the starting point. We use that as the sort of the central premise of what the children are doing, but it's not the only thing that they do. And you can make it as adaptable and flexible to the children, to the setting that they're in, the type of play you're doing. It's so adaptable. That's the real key to it. In terms of early years, I've certainly done this with children as young as 3, 4 years old. I've done work with a group of children who were transitioning from nursery into reception, so 4, 5-year-olds. And it was quite challenging. All we did, we started off, we were building a Duplo ice cream, so it had half a dozen pieces in it. But we sat down together and they had additional adult support, so there were quite a few of us in the room. And it took us a while to do it, but once we'd done it, we then role played and we went off into the nursery and we did some great role play, and the kids absolutely loved it. They were making menus for us, they were building drinks for us and cakes and all sorts of things, and it was how it built over time. They needed more support than possibly you would do with older children, but that means we just took more time and we went at the pace of the children. It's very much, this programme is very much child-led. That's really is the key. And as the facilitator, I think we find that we're just overlookers, aren't we? We're watching the story unfold. But if the children need support with problem solving or communicating with each other, we can help them do that through modelling. And particularly if, say, for example, we look at something and there's a piece missing. I mean, anybody, if there's a piece missing, it's like, this is the end of the world. But the kids will go, okay, let's just stop. What do we need to do? And instead of me as the adult go, don't worry, everybody, I'll go and find a piece. It's all right, not a problem. We sit down with the kids and say, right, what do you think we could do? How is that making us feel? And we work through the issues together with them, and we do it at their pace. Adults facilitating the sessions, we've got to be playful. If you're not going to be playful, you shouldn't be in the room, really. It's so important to have that passion and joy of play that you can share with the children. It is often used as a support for autistic children, but from our point of view, that's where it started, and we can really see how this has got real opportunities for every child to learn from other children, to share their joy and love of an interest like Lego, but possibly other things as well. So we're looking to develop what we do. And I think that's probably a good time to really sort of hand over to Gina and take us through more about the research.
Thanks, Abi. So I guess the whole premise of the Brick by Brick programme is to bring children together in a club, in a group, to socialise and play together. And I guess this programme has got its foundations in what's often known as Lego therapy. I don't know if anyone in the room has heard of Lego therapy. So I guess the Brick by Brick programme is representing our most updated thinking in this methodology. And I think drawing from Kerry's work and what she was talking about, really 5 minutes, oh wow, neurodivergent play and being more accepting of different ways of playing, and that all play is okay. Lego therapy historically was one of those play-based interventions where we're trying to kind of shift children to socialise through something they enjoy, and that's great, and that can be brilliant for some children. But we want to put a slightly different, more up-to-date lens on that. So we've redesigned Lego therapy with collaboration with Lego Foundation Learning Through Play experts, autistic consultants and academics in the field. So we do really focus on kind of neurodiversity affirming approaches to brick clubs. I hope that kind of makes sense. So what do we know about brick clubs in the early years? I think we'll start with the evidence base for Lego therapy or Lego-based therapy. The evidence-based so far really has been with six-year-olds up to kind of secondary school age children of 16. And these studies, though small scale, have kind of shown positive effects for social skills for autistic children. And whether that's something actually you want to be doing and changing, I think these studies started out in 2004. When there was a much more medicalised model and understanding of autism. And I think what we're wanting to do at Play Included is shift our perspectives and think about measuring belonging, measuring sense of self-esteem and self-worth. But in terms of social skills and supporting social skills, we know that this can help. Again, kind of a large-scale research study looking at Lego, collaborative Lego play in 240 children, 7 to 15-year-olds, again, showed a positive effect on social skills, really high levels of acceptability. People really enjoyed it, the kids really enjoyed it, parents and teachers really enjoyed it, and it was found to be cost-effective as well. But again, this study showed slightly better effectiveness. There was an indication of slightly better effectiveness for secondary school age students, so older. So what about the early years? For Lego therapy and that kind of trying to shift social skills, there are a handful of very small scale case studies showing that maybe there's an increase in social interaction with peers through collaborative Lego play. So a few people have adapted the programme using maybe Duplo bricks, bigger blocks, working one-to-one with an adult, maybe, as Abi said, taking more time. But I'm curious to know whether that's where we want to be going, actually. Is that what we want to be doing with early years and Lego play? I'm not sure. We've done a lovely pilot study of the Brick by Brick programme, and I think one of the settings I wanted to talk to you about was our work in Mexico. We piloted a brick club in quite a deprived area of Monterrey in Mexico, and one of their sessions was with a kind of primary school age group, and another was with a younger cohort, sort of 5 to 6 year olds. And what they found with the 5 to 6 year olds was they really were super happy to have a place where they could play. The parents were very emotional when they spoke to us about the impact of what had happened in these brick clubs, because I think in that particular context, nobody had invited their autistic children to play. Nobody had included them in a club. Nobody had offered anything for their children. And what they told us was this is the first time that they've been able to be in a group and feel like I have friends. Or to be even just to be welcomed and not excluded from those kinds of interactions. And one particular child said to the facilitator at the end, when it was the end of the pilot, "I'm really proud of you," he said. And what the facilitator felt he was saying actually was, "I'm actually just proud of myself." It was hard for them to sort of interact and play together, but they enjoyed it and they wanted to do it and they wanted to come every week. So what we've seen from the sort of case studies looking at using collaborative Lego play with younger children is I think you've just got to be a bit more flexible. I think the Brick by Brick programme works really well for sort of primary school age right up to adulthood. But for the early years, maybe there's no need for such a structured programme. We don't want to be shifting the autistic children's play to intervene and to make them, socialise in a particular way. We want to be able to follow their lead, as Kerry was saying, work together. Maybe building with an adult, it might feel safer for some children, but maybe not. Maybe building alone is okay. I think there's something lovely about parallel play and being interested and looking and sharing and showing what you've made. A lot of the times with the younger children in Mexico, they wanted to play with other things, not just Lego bricks. Brilliant, why not? It's about bringing children together, following their lead and following their play and where they're happy. So that's what we learned from our kind of sort of work with early years. And I think it's about supporting the adults in running the sessions and what they expect of the young people that they're trying to support. And maybe not trying to fix, not trying to change a person, but to accept and learn from where the children are at. We are really curious about supporting neurodivergent play in the early years here at Play Included. We're interested in thinking about our methodology for facilitating social interaction, which is a lot about open questions, a lot about kind of guided play, and applying it to whatever the child might be doing, and just making it as child-led as possible. So we really want to continually test and learn about best practice and not make any assumptions or any judgments based on our prior knowledge. We want to be open-minded and learn. And I think that's where children get the most benefit as well. So that was a bit of a whistle-stop talk, but I think we might have run out of time. But thank you so much for listening.